It seems logical. If you're cold, you put on thicker clothes. A heavy sweater, a dense hoodie, maybe even 2 layers at once. And yet, after a while, the cold comes back. Sometimes it feels even worse than before. This confuses a lot of people because visually the clothes look warm. They feel solid, thick, protective. But warmth doesn't work the way we expect. And thickness alone is often the reason clothes fail to keep you warm. Warmth is not fabric, it's air. Clothes don't create heat. Your body does. The job of clothing is simply to slow down how fast that heat escapes. And the main thing that makes this possible is not fabric but air. Warmth comes from layers of still air trapped around your body. When air can't move freely, heat stays close to the skin longer. Good insulating clothes are not just thick, they are structured. They create tiny air pockets that hold warm air in place. If a fabric presses flat against your body, even if it's heavy or dense, those air pockets disappear. Heat moves out quickly and the cold gets in. This is why two garments of the same thickness can feel completely different. One traps air and feels warm. The other collapses, compresses, and feels cold. Thickness looks impressive, but without trapped air, it doesn't protect you. In fact, very dense fabrics can sometimes make heat loss faster, not slower. This is the basic reason thick clothes often fail. They look warm, but they don't leave space for warmth to stay. What happens when thick clothes sit flat? Many thick clothes fail not because they're thin, but because they sit too close to the body. Dense fabrics often press flat against the skin, especially after a few minutes of wear. At first they may feel warm simply because they block airflow. But once the fabric settles, the warmth fades. When a garment lies flat, there is very little space left for air. And without air, insulation doesn't work. Heat moves straight through the material and escapes into the surrounding space. This is especially noticeable with heavy knits, thick sweatshirts, or tightly woven layers that look warm but don't hold shape. Another issue is that thick fabrics often rely on weight instead of structure. They feel solid, but solidity doesn't equal insulation. In fact, the heavier the fabric, the more likely it is to collapse under its own weight. Once that happens, the fabric becomes a simple barrier instead of an insulating layer. This is why thick clothes can feel warm for a short moment and then suddenly ineffective. They don't fail instantly. They fail once they lose space. And most dense fabrics lose that space very quickly. Compression. Sitting, leaning, and layering. Even well-made clothes lose warmth when they're compressed. The moment you sit down, lean back, cross your arms, or layer several items on top of each other, pressure builds. That pressure squeezes out the air that was doing the insulating work. This is why people often feel colder when sitting still than when standing or moving. A thick sweater that felt fine while walking suddenly feels useless on the couch. The fabric under your back, thighs, or arms gets flattened. Air pockets disappear. Heat escapes faster. Layering can cause the same problem. When layers are too tight or too heavy, they press into each other. Instead of creating multiple air gaps, they turn into one dense block of fabric. Visually it looks warmer. Thermally it's often worse. Compression explains a very common experience. Being wrapped in thick clothes and still feeling cold after some time. The clothes didn't change. Your position did. And once insulation is crushed, thickness alone can't protect you anymore. Why heavy fabrics can steal heat faster? Thick, heavy fabrics often feel protective, but weight can actually work against warmth. The heavier a garment is, the more pressure it puts on itself. Over time, gravity and movement pull the fabric downward, flattening its structure. What looked fluffy or dense at first slowly becomes compact and lifeless. When this happens, the fabric stops acting like insulation and starts acting like a cold surface. Heat transfers more easily through dense, compressed material than through light, air-filled layers. This is especially noticeable when you're sitting still. The weight of the fabric presses into your body, and heat escapes through the areas under the most pressure. Heavy fabrics also warm up more slowly. When you first put them on, they can feel cool against the skin. And if they fail to trap air properly, they never fully catch up to your body temperature. The result is a strange mix of bulk and cold. Clothes that look warm but never quite feel it. This is why adding more weight doesn't always help. Warmth depends on trapped air, not on how solid or substantial a fabric feels in your hands. The moisture you don't feel, but your body does. One of the most overlooked reasons thick clothes feel cold is moisture. Not sweat you can feel, but moisture you barely notice. Your body constantly releases water vapor, even when you're not active. Thick clothes can trap that moisture close to the skin. When moisture builds up inside a dense fabric, it pushes air out of the structure. Air pockets collapse and insulation disappears. Even a small amount of dampness is enough to change how warmth feels. The fabric may still feel dry to the touch, but thermally it behaves very differently. This is why you can feel chilled without ever feeling wet. The moisture is there, spread thinly through the fabric. Once heat starts escaping faster, your body tries to compensate, and you feel cold, tired, or tense. Fabrics that don't manage moisture well tend to feel warm at first, and then suddenly cold. It's not a failure of thickness. It's a failure of airflow and moisture balance, two things thick clothes often struggle with indoors. Why thin layers often feel warmer? Thin layers work not because they are special but because they create space. Each separate layer traps a thin pocket of air between your body and the next surface. When layered correctly, these pockets stay stable and slow heat loss much more effectively than one thick garment. Multiple light layers also adapt better to movement. When you shift, stand, or sit, the layers move slightly instead of collapsing all at once. This helps preserve air gaps, even under pressure. A single thick item, on the other hand, tends to flatten as a whole. Thin layers also handle moisture better. Instead of trapping vapor in one dense mass, they allow moisture to spread and escape gradually. This keeps air pockets intact for longer and prevents that sudden cold feeling that often appears after sitting still. This is why people are often surprised that a light base layer, a thin sweater, and a loose outer layer feel warmer than one heavy hoodie. Warmth comes from spacing and flexibility, not bulk. Thin layers simply give warmth more room to exist. Structure matters more than weight. The most reliable warm clothes are not the heaviest ones, but the ones that hold their shape. Structure is what keeps air trapped in place. Fabrics with natural loft, spring, or texture resist collapsing and maintain insulation, even when worn for hours. Light but structured materials stay warmer because they don't press flat against the body. They keep small, stable air pockets alive. Once structure is gone, warmth disappears, no matter how thick the fabric looks. This is why some lightweight garments feel surprisingly warm, while heavy ones disappoint. It's not about how much material there is, but how that material behaves over time. Does it stay lifted, or does it sink and flatten? When choosing warm clothing, structure should be the first thing to notice. If a fabric can support itself without relying on weight, it will usually keep you warmer, especially indoors where pressure, stillness, and time expose the weaknesses of thick but shapeless clothes. Why thick clothes fail more often indoors? Indoors, the rules of warmth change. There is less airflow, less movement, and more time for heat loss to show itself. Thick clothes often feel fine outside, where cold air is moving and the body stays active. But once you're indoors and sitting still, their weaknesses become obvious. Heavy, dense fabrics are designed to block external cold, not to manage internal heat over long periods. Inside, body heat slowly escapes into the surrounding space. If clothes can't trap air properly, that heat leaks away unnoticed. Over time, you start feeling chilled even though the room isn't very cold. Indoors also means more contact with surfaces. Chairs, sofas, and walls compress clothing constantly. Thick garments flatten against the body, especially at the back and legs. This destroys insulation exactly where warmth is needed most. This is why people often feel colder at home than outside, even in thicker clothes. Indoor cold isn't about wind or temperature. It's about time, pressure, and poor air retention. Problems thick fabrics handle surprisingly badly. The delayed cold effect. One of the most confusing experiences is delayed cold. You put on thick clothes, feel comfortable, and assume the problem is solved. Then, after 20 or 30 minutes, the cold slowly returns. This happens because heat loss isn't always immediate. Thick clothes can block airflow at first, creating a short-term feeling of warmth. But as the fabric settles, compresses, and absorbs moisture, insulation weakens. Air pockets disappear gradually, not all at once. Your body keeps producing heat, but it escapes faster than before. The change is subtle. You don't feel a sudden chill. Instead, you feel slightly tense, tired, or restless, classic signs of heat loss. Delayed cold is often mistaken for bad circulation or room temperature issues. In reality, it's a clothing problem. The fabric didn't stop working instantly. just couldn't keep working overtime.